So welcome back to our first episode of None Other Tech podcast for 2026. Welcome back to Steve and Andrew, the other co-hosts of the show. And I guess for once, we are planning on a part two. So our last episode, which was at the end of 2025, we kind of covered. It was meant to be sort of primarily an Azure Virtual Desktop discussion, which kind of turned into AVD versus Windows 365. But yeah, I mean, it was a good discussion. There was loads of great information, but I just had so many more burning questions for you guys. So I kind of wanted to carry on with that discussion. If you guys are happy with that.
Oh, definitely.
Awesome, cool. So I guess we'll just kind of jump straight into it. One of the other areas I wanted to kind of touch on was the fact that I guess in both scenarios, Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365, you can either Entra join those devices or you can domain join them, right? So I guess the traditional process would be to domain join them. Potentially the more modern approach you could argue is Entra ID joining them. What do you guys tend to see, when you guys are deploying these solutions? Which one would you sort of tend to steer towards?
I think a lot of it comes from customers' maturity in where they are in their journey in 365 to start with. Ideally, I would say Entra join is the primary focus because that's the way Microsoft are going now anyway. And with the likes of Cloud Kerberos and everything, really can get the same functionality with Entra join only as you would with hybrid join. But it's where the customer's at and where their maturity is with identities. So obviously the identity is the key part there as well. And are they looking to use Hello for Business, or are they just still relying on passwords and signing in that way? So I would always prefer to go Entra join only where possible. I don't know what your thoughts are, Steve, but I think it is very much dependent on the customer's maturity, and you can help them, push them in that way and create that strategy. But it comes down to where the needs are really required.
Yeah, I'd say, to be fair, from my side, it's the opposite that I'm seeing, although much like yourself, I would rather go Entra first. I think there's no reason to these days. But yeah, unfortunately, from what I'm seeing, a lot of deployments looking like is they're domain joined because the rest of the infrastructure is already on Azure. They've got a domain control, they've got file servers, database servers, etc. So when it comes to scoping or building a solution around AVD, why break the norm? Just domain join them and everything will be fine and everything works. I think similar to what you said there, Andy, with regards to maturity level, if the customer still has group policy doing the majority of the lifting around the customizations and any preferences or policies that have been pushed out to those session hosts, you generally find during an AVD deployment, they just want to deploy AVD. They don't want to do all the precursory work of converting those group policies into Intune policies and all the extra stuff that you need to take into consideration when adopting that Entra joined approach. So unfortunately for me, as much as I would love to go Entra first for AVD session hosts, I'm still seeing a lot of domain joined. You can now as well, you don't have to maintain that hybrid AVD. You can just go fully Entra for your AVD deployment and not have any hybrid identities as well. I don't know if you guys saw, but Azure Files now supports Entra identities instead of hybrid user objects. So the whole, we want to use FSLogix, we need to stay hybrid with the identities and the
that's made life a lot better,
devices.
I think.
Yeah, 100%. But I would like to think now we're going to start seeing more Entra pure stuff.
Yeah,
probably not. Probably not on my side for a while, unfortunately, just because of the nature of the beast of working for an MSP.
No, that's I guess comes down to size of customer. I think a couple of good points there with things like group policies. Group policies, you've got tens of thousands of settings potentially, haven't you? Whereas Intune only in the thousands. And so, but some of those group policies, they're legacy. And they're there because I've always done it. It goes back to that thing of why do you do that? Well, we've always done it that way. And it's trying to get that shift as well. So it's that mind shift from how we've done it to actually how we should be doing it. And whilst you can do it how you've always done it, is that the best way? My personal view is probably not, but it works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think people still take that approach with identity. We've always done it this way. We don't want to go to Entra-only identities because that's scary. That's new for us. It's a tried and tested approach now. But if they still got legacy kit on-prem, they want to stick with legacy methods.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I remember, I think it was actually a project we did together, Steve. I remember looking into the Entra-joined AVDs, and sure enough, the settings catalog options is considerably less than obviously the fact that you could just use group policy, right? Which is, like you say, tons and tons of different options. Settings catalog only has certain configurations which are applicable to like multi-session VMs, for example. You mentioned hybrid there, Steve, which is just worth touching on a little bit from I guess, looking at it from my side, from like a conditional access perspective. Would you say that a lot of your AVD environments are domain joined only, or are they going more down the hybrid route? Because I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I guess from a domain joined perspective, as far as conditional access is concerned, they're just unmanaged devices because there's no Entra attributes that can be used within conditional access, right? As opposed to it being hybrid joined, and then you've got the server type, which can then be used within conditional access policies. So do you see many people hybrid joining their AVD kit or not?
No, and I think purely because historically it caused problems. So if you remember, we used to have to block the AAD workplace join type stuff. So I think you'll probably find the majority of them are just domain joined session hosts, purely, again, because of legacy beliefs around the fact that, you can't do that, it causes problems. I think me and you were looking into an issue a while ago with Office sign-ins not working. Yeah. And it was everything online suggested, it's because it's hybrid, it's because it's doing this, it can't cope with this, all out of date legacy information. Like, it worked absolutely fine. The issue was related to something else. Yeah. But yeah, I think the majority of the ones, certainly older than, where the customer's been on AVD before Windows 11 multi-user session, for example, if they were using old server-based AVD session hosts or Windows 10 multi-user session hosts, you'll probably find that customer will still be just pure domain joined, because any project that's been done to upgrade them to Windows 11 multi-user session will have purely been a project to replace the template for the session hosts. It won't have been to make any fundamental changes to the way they're configured, joined, deployed, etc. So yeah, as much as I would love to see them all being either Entra or hybrid at a push, majority of them are probably just going to be domain joined.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. And you touched a little bit on the FSLogix piece, just to dig into that a little bit more. So the users had to be synced, right? It was nothing to do with the devices as such. It was that in order to use FSLogix with Azure Files, previously the users had to be synced. They had to be hybrid users, didn't they? And then was it just after Ignite, I think, November, around November time, they introduced Azure Files for cloud only accounts. So that's what you were saying there with regards to moving to pure cloud native AVD, not just the device element and the Entra joined piece, but also the identity, the user can be cloud native. Yeah.
It also means if you've got a customer who is purely just Entra at the moment, they have no on-premise identity, but they have a requirement where you think AVD or Windows 365 might fit the bill, that's no longer a write-off, because you're not having to take a step back and introduce the on-prem side of the architecture. You can now do that whilst maintaining a cloud-native, cloud-only approach,
exactly,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I was speaking to a customer earlier on last year, and it was very much a case of, AVD would be a great solution for us, but they're cloud only. I mean, it's a relatively small customer. It's like, well, you can't really do the FSLogix piece without hybrid identity. Could you do it before? Probably, but not without the permissions. That was the biggest thing. The security side of it would be always a big risk. And well, now actually you can do it, no problem, and you can secure those profiles. Because that's ultimately, you don't want people to be cross-accessing other people's profiles because there's going to be sensitive data in there.
Yeah. To be fair, I did have this discussion with one of our PS engineers because I was doing one of the things that I do at my company is I do these lunch and learn sessions. So I'll just half an hour, I'll teach somebody something and anybody can join and I'll just run through whatever it is. And we were doing one around troubleshooting FSLogix. And I mentioned about the hybrid piece, the identity needs to be hybrid. And somebody challenged me on it and they were like, no, you can just do it with pure Entra. And they sent me a guide that they found on how to do it. And when I was reading through the security concerns that I had were up there. You were essentially granting a generic account access to all subfolders and files. You weren't following the creator owner architecture that you would do for roaming profiles, folder redirection, or FSLogix, etc. And I was like, can you do it? Arguably, yes. Should you? Absolutely not. Categorically, no.
I think I probably read the same guide. When I was looking at it, it was, it's possible, but it's from a security standpoint, absolutely not.
Yeah.
If you don't care about that stuff, then not, fill your boots. But actually, you shouldn't be. We should be recommending that solution to customers for a production environment. You don't want. You didn't want to do that back then, whereas now you can do it and it's in a secure setup.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, Nate knows I love doing things when people say you can't do that. Like when somebody goes, you can't do that, I go, hold my beer, watch me. Do you know what I mean? Like, but stuff like that, in good conscience, I couldn't put that into a production environment, not at all.
Yeah, you do right. We've talked about FSLogix a lot. I don't know if we dug into it properly in the last episode. Does maybe one of you want to sort of, because I've got a follow-on question from this, but does maybe one of you want to just break down FSLogix, what it is, why it's used, in an AVD environment?
I can take that one if you want, Andrew.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So FSLogix is the technological successor to user profile disks, which was the technological successor to roaming profiles. However, there's a lot of misunderstanding around the job it's trying to do. For me, FSLogix is a modern term used loosely, solution to roaming profiles. It allows users' app data, customizations, registry keys and stuff to roam between machines with them without creating duplicate copies everywhere they go. That was one of the biggest drawbacks to roaming profiles, was if a user logged into a desktop machine, it pulled down a copy of their roaming profile from the server and it created a local copy. So if you have a hot desking environment, you run two risks. One, you've got data everywhere and it fills up and you have to create policies to clean it out after a certain period of time. But also, two, you create a versioning nightmare because roaming profiles always used to be last log off wins. So if somebody, user A comes in the morning, logs into machine 1, then they move over to the other side of the building, log into machine 2, they do a load of work and they save some stuff, they update some customizations, properties, change their email signatures, stuff like that, then sign out of that machine. Then somebody comes over to use machine 1 and goes, I want to sign in, and signs them out. Last logged off wins. So all that work that they just did and all the customization stuff they did gets overwritten by the morning's version of their profile. So it was
I didn't know that.
It caused all sorts of issues as well. Then you've got the issue with devices no longer being fixed static devices. They move. Devices became mobile. So you had to start using offline files with your roaming profiles. Otherwise, you'd have logon issues. Then you end up with versioning issues for offline files.
Offline files, I used to hate that feature.
I could prattle on for hours about the caveats around all of them. But then user profile disks came around for virtual desktop terminal server deployments within the Microsoft Sync using RDS, and user profile disks were great. Think of it as like a USB thumb drive with your app data on it, your user profile, and basically you log into a session host, you plug the USB drive in, you can actually go see it in disk management, you can see it mounted as a volume. All the work's done to that, it's saved back to that, so that when you sign off, the USB drive gets unplugged, put back on a shelf ready for when you log in again. That was a great solution, but it had its limitations. Didn't work very well around search indexing, didn't work very well with cloud applications like OneDrive and SharePoint synchronization and stuff. So FSLogix came about, and it wasn't just geared towards terminal server environments. You can actually rock FSLogix on a normal local desktop. You can use it as a roaming profile solution. It also tackled the versioning stuff by allowing you to log in and mount a read-only version of your profile should you want to log in somewhere else. So FSLogix kind of followed a path of succession. I mean, profiles in general are still horrible from a sysadmin point of view. And when it comes to troubleshooting FSLogix, it's just as painful as all the other stuff, unless you kind of look at it of the mindset of, okay, well, it's a drive getting attached. If it's failed to attach, why can't I attach it? I could do a whole podcast on just troubleshooting FSLogix. But yeah, it solved so many problems, but with it kind of created some as well. I think from an IT or an architectural point of view, we have to understand that roaming profiles aren't designed to hold all of your user documents. It's not designed to house your desktop documents, download, stuff like that. Instead, you have to look at, let's go back to the early terminal server days where we're using roaming profiles, and not just terminal server, but the old domain days. We also used a technology called folder redirection. So the two were used in conjunction because you didn't want to go pulling big amounts of data from the server and pushing it back up to the server. So you used folder redirection. Now, if you're using FSLogix in an on-prem environment, you still very much want to use folder redirection, or if I can convince you to, use OneDrive known folder move. Just because they're the two next evolutionary steps of folder redirection and roaming profiles. But yeah, sorry, I waffled a bit there on profiles and documents.
No, it was good. Because there is two elements to FSLogix, isn't there? There's the profile containers and then there's the Office containers.
Yeah.
Just briefly explain to me, because I've looked at it before, but I always forget what the difference between them is. The Office container, what does that hold specifically? Can you remember?
I mean, putting me on the spot there. No, not without you hearing my keyboard clacking away. Asking my favorite.
No. I mean, that's cool. I think the idea is it's something to do with the Office apps cache, right? I don't think it stores licensing data in there. I think that's stored in the profile container. I could be wrong, but I think it's supposed to be used with, like you mentioned, OneDrive known folder move. I think it's used for that, right? So if you are going to be using OneDrive known folder move, I think that's what the Office container is used for.
I think it also holds the OST, is it, as well, for Exchange?
Yes. Yeah.
And things like that. Because, I mean, that's where I first came across FSLogix, was one of those day migrations for customers. Things like Exchange, when you're running on-prem, you'd run in online mode, not cached, because you didn't need to cache it on your VDI. So you didn't need to.
I'd argue that on that one. But they said you didn't, but
it's interesting because I gave that advice to somebody, to a client a few months back, actually, because I think I read it somewhere. I think maybe I even saw it on YouTube from somebody who's in the AVD space, and he suggested, you don't need to cache this data because you're so close to the exchanges when you're connecting. But in reality, it was still a really poor experience.
No, but that was the thing. Even with Exchange on-prem, it was they would run it on online mode as opposed to cached, because again, your servers are very close to the data center, so line of sight. And then they moved to Exchange Online. Of course, you've got all sorts of issues where you've got maybe 200-300, possibly even 2,000-3,000 users using a VDI solution, all running with Exchange Online in online mode. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. And then FSLogix comes along, and then Microsoft bought FSLogix, didn't they? And it was then bundled with the licensing for M365. But that was the main reason I looked at it was profile usage, but the main thing was OneDrive and Exchange Online caching, because that needs to travel with you wherever you went.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, FSLogix did support those things before it was separated into the Office container, profile container thing. But one issue with one caused problems with the other. And one of the things, and it infuriates me to this day, but one of the things that system administrators or service desk engineers will often do is just delete a profile. Now, I am a huge advocate of your FSLogix profiles should be disposable. You should be using single sign-on. You should be using some form of folder redirection. You should be able to use your FSLogix profile and nothing bad happens as a result. But real world doesn't always work like that. But yeah, when troubleshooting issues, a lot of people will just go, I've recreated the profile and it solved this weird application issue. Cool, crack on, have fun. Well, the separation of the two also allowed you to tame one without impacting the other. But yeah, there were a lot of issues, I think, that were experienced around Office activation, certainly the roaming activation stuff, and around caching within OneDrive and SharePoint and stuff. That the separation of the Office and profile container did kind of fix. Search indexing as well. I think it was a boon to search indexing.
Yeah, you did mention that, yeah. So in terms of back to the whole AVD versus Windows 365 thing, the difference is there then is that Windows 365 doesn't use FSLogix, right? Because I guess to your point that domain joined devices can still use FSLogix. I guess in the default configuration, Windows 365 doesn't need to because it's a personal PC.
And you could argue the same about personalized AVD session hosts, because it's a dedicated session host. Do you need FSLogix for that user? Potentially not. But if you have a standard, you would want to follow that standard, whether it's AVD, Win365 personal or pooled session hosts for AVD. But yeah, that's one of the beauties of Win365. I find it's you just deploy and go to the user. You don't need to worry about those extra things. But
so am I right in thinking then that, keep me right here, guys, if FSLogix is now supported by cloud-only users, and you can obviously use it with an Entra joined device, so could you use FSLogix on a Windows 365 Entra joined device? Is that doable?
Theoretically, I see absolutely no reason why you couldn't.
Would there be any benefit from doing it? Because I mean, I was of the assumption that the Windows 365 cloud PC is effectively a cloud-based equivalent of your physical PC, right? And to your point of, you should be able to lose your profile, but not be able to restore it, or not really have to worry about losing that data. I mean, that's the whole argument of, well, just make sure that you've got Windows OneDrive known folder move set up and all of your data is in the correct places. So in theory, even if I lost my cloud PC, I just spin up another one or sign into a device and I've got all my data back. Would there be any benefit of using FSLogix with Windows 365? So
the caveat there is, as long as you've got everything else set up properly. Then
sure,
yes. Yeah. So, because you've got to bear in mind, OneDrive known folder move is only going to back up your desktop documents, downloads, and any other folders that you manually put in there.
Sure.
What it isn't going to do is your app data. So where do your Edge, Chrome, Firefox, whatever your browser of choice is, I won't judge you unless it's Opera, but whatever your browser of choice is, all your bookmarks, favorites, and everything should be in your app data. You shouldn't be allowing users to sign into Chrome with personal profiles and stuff like that. Or in an ideal world, you'd be pushing out a managed browser and you'd be backing up all the credentials and the bookmarks and everything to 365 through Entra. Mm-hmm. So as long as you've laid the foundation to not need it, then absolutely you don't need it. But again, real world, probably haven't got all of the above. So there would be some advantages to using FSLogix, particularly in the sense of reprovisioning devices. Your user can log in, they've still got the same Outlook setup, they've still got the same bookmarks, favorite, wallpaper, start menu, layout, unless you are doing everything in a more modern way where that's all managed through Intune and synced through Entra and stuff. Yeah. Because your signatures in Outlook now, for example, if you're using the new Outlook client, your signatures are synced with 365 anyway. Yeah. So you should be able to recreate a new mail profile, not lose your mail signatures. But it depends. If you're doing everything by 2026's standards, there's probably very little benefit, if any at all. But if you're still one shoe in the past, then it wouldn't hurt, I don't think. Because most people aren't backing up their AVD session hosts and they're not backing up the Windows 365 cloud PCs. So having your user profiles in a storage account that you may be backing up could be advantageous in certain situations. Yeah, I wouldn't go putting it on every scope of work as a best practice or standard approach to stuff.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Got to think of the cost of the storage as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's additional because I mean you've already got the cost of the Windows 365 license itself, right? Which is, I mean, the whole point is that you're kind of moving away from that Azure consumption piece to the SaaS license piece, which is the added benefit of moving to Windows 365. You don't have to have that additional.
I mean, it's a cloud PC, so Therefore, it's got everything that your PC has. So, provided you've got known folder move, you've got everything there. And if you're signing into Edge with your Entra credentials, then of course it's going to back things like your favorites up as well. So you're pretty much covered. It's just when you log onto a new one, all you've got to do is set up your Outlook profile again, which is pretty straightforward. I still don't like the new Outlook.
I don't think many people do.
You've got till 2029.
I know. They'll extend it again.
Yeah, indeed. You did touch on a little bit, just conscious of time, so we'll think about wrapping up very shortly. But you talked about single sign-on, Steve. So many people get that wrong when it comes to AVD. Maybe you could just pick up on that a little bit insofar as what that single sign-on really means, I guess, from an AVD perspective. And I guess the same applies for Windows 365, and how you would maybe go about just double checking to make sure your configurations, available and support single sign-on. Yeah.
So, I mean, to be fair, is it available and does it support it? Check your Entra Sync settings and make sure you've got the single sign-on box ticked. The amount of times that is not ticked, and then people are wondering why they're having to sign into everything 3 or 4 times on an AVD session host. It's like, well, come on, you've not even enabled single sign-on at the sync level. But as Andrew just said there, you sign in after losing your profile, you just have to set up Outlook again. In an ideal world, if single sign-on's working properly, you don't even need to do that. You open Outlook and it pre-populates the sign-in information.
Well, that's it, yeah.
Next, you got your emails. But in an AVD environment, it does a lot more than just stopping users having to sign in. You've obviously got your Office activation stuff as well that you don't want it to prompt users to have to sign in to authenticate Office. So having single sign-on configured properly from the entire estate just makes the user experience as they're moving between session hosts, or even having a profile recreated, it just makes it seamless. They sign in once, they open an application, it knows who they are, it passes the credentials through. If you're using things like Windows Hello for Business and Cloud Kerberos Trust, there are some caveats around that. For example, if your user lives in the domain administrators group on premise for some crazy reason that I will never condone. But if the user is privileged, it will break. They won't get a Kerberos ticket, and single sign-on won't want to work for them. Found that one out the hard way a long time ago.
I was going to say, have you noticed that is now listed in the Azure
AD Kerberos now, is it?
It fucking wasn't last time we looked at it. I swear to God, we found that frigging bug years ago.
Yeah, we did. But yeah, there are some weird behaviours. But if you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing, then it works beautifully. Yeah. That's the thing. And just going back to what Andy mentioned earlier, is a lot of people want to carry on doing the same old stuff, expecting different results, and you can't do the same stuff you've always done in this new modern era of computing. Group policy is wonderful. When's Intune going to look like group policy? It's not. Get over it. Move on. Use Intune policies. And I think there's this habitual thing of, terminal servers must work like this. It must operate like this. I want to deploy it like this. I want to use it like this. That's not the way we're doing things anymore. It's moved on. Things have been put in place to allow you to do it better, but you have to do it different.
It's the same as they just treat it like they would have done with their old VDI infrastructure. It's on a network. It's behind a firewall. It's fine. It's in the cloud, and it brings the whole thing with zero trust. Identity is the new perimeter. Your network is still important, and you still need to control it. But your users have far more access to things now, and these devices aren't within your data center. You can't go to bed at night knowing that you closed all the ports up on your firewall so you can sleep happy.
I think that's my biggest gripe to the whole, keeping things on premise, domain joined element. I would much rather have an AVD. I mean, I've seen it in client environments where it's not AVD specific, but VDI, Citrix environments and stuff like that, where people are like, we manage it ourselves, we do it all ourselves. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's start enabling these conditional access policies to minimize sign-in frequency. From an unmanaged device. We'll get that in place. We'll make sure people are re-authenticating every 4 hours when they're coming in from an unmanaged device, and then before you know it, you're getting phone calls going, everyone in Citrix is having to sign in, every 4 hours. yeah, because you've not hybrid joined them, and Entra can't see them, or because they're not Entra joined. I've had that conversation a couple of times. It's like in today's age, and it doesn't help when you get vendors like Citrix that make it difficult or don't have appropriate documentation. And this isn't a dig at Citrix. They just happened to be the last one that I was dealing with where I kind of hit this issue.
Dig away.
But their documentation was just terrible. And in order to provide proper this one will get you proper single sign-on capability for Citrix, you've got to have an ADFS server. You've got to use ADFS. So it still doesn't support.
You've got to federate to get single sign-on.
You've got to federate. Yeah. When hopefully they'll get rid of that at some point soon, but that was a whole other conversation as well.
Even ADFS is something that shouldn't be in place these days for 365.
Yeah. I mean, you say 365. What about the whole people federating with GoDaddy and stuff? I've recently had to unpick one of those, so don't get me started there. WatchGuard do it for AuthPoint. AuthPoint requires federating your Entra with on-prem with ADFS for that. It's like, what year are we living in?
So old school, yeah.
Yeah. Funny that you say you don't want to bash Citrix. Can I openly bash Sage for the fact that in 2026 their documentation still says that they don't support terminal server environments? And it has done since forever.
Madness.
I think it's not just Sage though. A lot of accounting products for some reason just don't support shared device platform.
It's just mental to me.
Just with the way it works, and even I've had it where you got the app on individual PCs, it just can't handle shared data for some reason as well. Anyway, that's digressing.
Just a closing point on the single sign-on piece though, Steve. The bit that I was interested to dig into was, correct me if I'm wrong, there is some session host properties that have to be configured, which a lot of people forget about. Is that right? That's the one
do you mean that is AAD joined flag in the RDP connection properties?
Is it that one? I forget.
I believe that's the flag. It is such a pain in the ass. And what's annoying is there's none of the pages. So the way it works with the AVD remote desktop connection properties tab is, think of it as a mix of the collection properties and session host properties in your old on-prem server manager thing. But you've got these little tabs that you can click across and you can choose, do you want to redirect monitors? Do you want to redirect printers? This, that, and the other. You choose all those. The final tab is, what does this look like as code? And it shows you it as parameters, similar to what you would see if you open an RDP file in Notepad. For anybody listening to this who's never done it before, open a .rdp file in Notepad. There's a lot of parameters and settings in there that you can play with. I don't know if they've fixed this because it's been a while since I've looked at it, but there was no tick box or radial checkbox button or anything that added this is AAD joined flag.
There is there now.
Oh, it's there now, is it?
Yeah.
Right. You used to have to go digging away in the documentation to find it, to add it in. Yep. And without that being set, I mean, sometimes you couldn't even sign in. Like, it just wouldn't let you sign in as a user. And then other times, single sign-in didn't work at all. What a pain in the ass that was.
Yeah, just one to look out for.
I use my work's AVD, just because I use my Mac pretty much all the time. So I just log onto AVD, and one of the biggest gripes I have is I have to type in my password every time I log onto the desktop, and it's because we've not enabled the single sign-on, because I'm signing the Windows app, and because I'm on a non-company device, I re-authenticate when I open the Windows app, which I'm fine with, and it then prompts me for my password again when I sign up. When I log into the desktop, it's like, I shouldn't be doing that.
I hate that.
Biggest gripe is we're not using passkeys either, but passwordless. Let's go passwordless.
Yeah,
I won't judge you for using a Mac, but one of the things that I do want to mention around FSLogix is, just reading the minutes or the notes here from the last one, is sizing and right sizing of stuff. Microsoft's documentation tell you that you need to use Azure Files Premium. I would challenge that.
They do.
Yeah, I would challenge that. And if it's putting anybody off as being cost prohibitive, try it on standard and see how you get on. I've ran AVD multi-session environments with 150 users using Azure Files standard, and I have had beautiful disk response times from the FSLogix profiles. Yeah. One of the biggest things that will cause excessive I/O on FSLogix profiles is not adding the right exclusions to your EDR product for FSLogix. Most EDR providers will have some form of documentation and knowledge base around making exclusions for FSLogix. Put them in place. You might find your disk I/O gets a lot better. Azure Files Premium, if you need it, but I wouldn't always start there personally. Just throwing that in there.
Yeah.
No, it's the same with anything with Microsoft. Start off with a smaller license pricing first, and if you need to upscale.
Yeah.
I mean, not with that. It's with the storage side, it's relatively easy to downscale, but licensing, it's harder to downscale than it is to upscale.
Yeah, to be fair, in general with Azure, and I've always taken this approach, I always try and give the customer the thick end of the stick when it comes to my pricing expectations, because it's easier for me to give them a discount than it is to give them an increase.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I mentioned last time about how I size it and how I work out 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
That ensures that I'm always actually over budget. And whilst I would like to quote for Azure Files Premium and then go for standard and give them a nice little, reduction on the bill, I would probably instead have an honest conversation with them around the benefits, cost savings, and risks of starting with standard and maybe increasing to premium if we need to, rather than quoting it on standard and hoping for the best. But yeah, like I say, up to 150 users I've had, an insurance underwriter, so a lot of disk I/O going on with creating documents, saving documents, etc. And yeah, I had beautiful disk response times on a Azure Files standard.
Yeah, it's good to know. Good information for anyone who wants to, is interested in piloting or just, proof of concept in it as well. You don't have to go all guns ho on that kind of stuff, and you can, dip your toe in and just make sure it's going to work for you as a platform first. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really good information. I mean, I'm
say that would then tie in with the sizing of the VM as well.
Yeah.
So,
which was to your point last time, was as also understanding how many people you want on that VM at any one time.
And what they're going to be doing on it. Is it just going to be box standard stuff, or is there going to be any specialist software on there? So, get the sizing for your VM right. Don't always just go for a D, because I think the default's D8 or something.
They do go quite large. Yeah, they go for the 16 core, over 32 gig type ones. And it's like, actually, they cost a lot to run even just for 12 hours a day, never mind 24 hours a day. So yes, sizing is important. And if anybody wants to drop a comment below and have a conversation around sizing, I'm more than happy to throw a little bit of Yorkshire into the equation, because we are notoriously tight even with other people's money.
One thing, deep pockets.
Yeah, pretty much. One thing I noticed that we mentioned last time, and I don't know if I can just get some sort of universal agreement here, but the FSLogix group policy templates, the ADMX templates, are horrific. Can somebody listening to this poke somebody on Microsoft side and fix those ADMX templates?
Yeah, horrific how?
In the sense of, so traditionally you'll open up, and we're going over time now, but let's just go with it, whoever's listening. When you open up a group policy and you edit, so say for example it says FSLogix profiles are enabled. That's a policy in the GP editor. You double click it and normally you would have enabled or disabled as like a radial tick button. Instead, you have a little drop down that says enabled or disabled, and you're like, okay, cool, this enables or disables this feature that I'm looking at. No, it enables or disables that policy option. So you have to click enabled, then that unlocks a set of tick boxes where you then have enabled or disabled. And it's the same for almost every policy in FSLogix in the ADMX template. So say, for example, you've got one that says Roam, the Roam identity credential one for the sign-on issue. You double click that. You've then got a little drop down that says enabled or disabled. You choose enabled, and then you then have to go choose enabled for the Roam identity. So you're saying yes twice. It's really weird. If you open up it in Notepad, it looks horrible.
It's also what I found with some of the ADMX templates. If you're an Entra join only, and you're pushing those policies out through Intune policies, it doesn't apply to multi-session hosts.
No, only that's what I was saying to you before. Like, there's only so many configurations that are supported.
Is it a user policy, not a device policy in Intune?
I don't.
Well, if it's multi-session, I would argue it's probably going to be device, but
it's got to be device.
But it's you end up having to deploy it via PowerShell scripts and a Win32 custom app deployment. So you package that up. And it's just a real ball ache. But I mean, it works, but it would be so much nicer if the multi-session host worked with the Intune policies.
Yeah.
Because I spent time scratching my head, just like, why is that not applying? Because it's set the policies in Intune, push it out to the device, but it doesn't successfully apply.
Parity on the settings catalog would be really nice. Yeah, because I know when you create a policy and head into settings catalog, you've got some filters and you can choose in their OS type multi-session, and then it'll show you all of the settings catalog that are applicable for multi-session. But if you don't know to use that filter, like you've just said there, and it's possible to go ahead and configure a policy and just assume that it's going to apply to an Entra join session host, but it might not if those particular settings don't actually support multi-session.
It's weird though,
frustrating.
Because if you know how FSLogix works in the background, it's a registry key that lives in current machine, software, FSLogix.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't matter whether it's multi-user or not. If it's applying those registry keys on the device, it should just apply them. So something funky going on with the Intune deployment there, I think.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, again, last time I did AVD was a good few months ago, so it may have changed. But you end up having to build a custom Win32 app that encompass those scripts to
I
register.
vaguely remember seeing that in the documentation somewhere. Yeah, it's been a while since I looked as well, but yeah, it rings a bell.
And you have to do the same for Teams. You have to do some registry hacks for Teams to work on AVD. You would think surely this should be default.
Which ones? Do you mean Entra only, or?
I think it is Entra only. It's been that long since I've done it, but there was some to deploy the Teams stuff. Obviously, you had to make some certain changes on each session host.
Right. Was that off the Teams optimization stuff? Because I think there was stuff for that, wasn't there?
There's quite a lot of registry recommendations. Yeah, I mean, we're going off piece here a little bit right into the realm of Teams, but yeah. So I tend to use the Bootstrapper installer, bake that into my template. But even then, to get the Outlook add-in for Teams working, you have to do some PowerShell jiggery-pokery to go into an AppX folder to be able to launch the installer for the MSI for it. It is all a little bit bodgy at times, isn't it, with what you're doing?
I mean, that's one of the beauties if you're deploying it via code.
Yeah.
Infrastructure as code, you can just bake all that in. So when you deploy it, it just does everything. So you don't then have to worry about changing anything afterwards.
Yeah.
All I'll say is you don't get these issues with Windows 365.
No, you don't get these issues with them. We have to experience them on our end.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just part and parcel of being a sysadmin and an architect for these sorts of solutions, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah,
the fun little quirks. It'd be boring if we just had to reset passwords all day, every day.
Oh, definitely.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah,
absolutely.
Good stuff. Well, like you say, we are over time, so I think it's probably about time to wrap it up. But I think this has been a really good deep dive and discussion around AVD versus Windows 365. If any listeners have got any questions, like you say, Steve, drop them in the comments below. If anyone has any topics, I guess, that they would like us to cover, again, drop them below. I don't know if you guys, maybe I'll put it out to you guys to decide on a topic for the next episode.
Well, should we just say what our area of expertise are? Obviously, new year, new start. If people know what we like and what we're good at, then they can ask us questions about what we're good at. There's no point anybody asking me about, I don't know, cross-stitching or crocheting, because I haven't got a clue. But I mean, if it's all right, I'll start. I'm an old school on-prem infrastructure guy. Cut my teeth on data centers, remote desktop services, terminal servers. We were doing AVD, if you will, as a monthly recurring user service before AVD was a thing. So we used to have a colo data center in Manchester where we sold remote desktop services that were running on VMMS, VMMC, VMMS, whatever those are. And then pretty much
I didn't know what that is.
Virtual machine. What is it? System Center, SCVMM. That's it. Sorry, System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So we spun up separate clouds for all of our customers, and they had their own terminal server environments. As soon as Azure went into preview as Microsoft Windows Azure, we were on it. We were moving people to it. I was migrating from our data center. I was moving VHDs up. So kind of the on-prem terminal server is where I would say my expertise lies. And as a result of that, now in 2026, it has transitioned to AVD and Windows 365. Same beast, different mask on. So yeah, if anybody wants any of that demystifying, just let us know.
Yeah, no, that's good. I guess my area is probably more around the Microsoft 365, anything that kind of sits underneath that security, compliance, and identity piece. So, I guess anything around Entra. I'm really big on identity and access. Anything around Entra, ID governance, conditional access. A big advocate for things like access packages and access reviews. I don't think enough organizations make the most of those features. I really don't. I think there's just so much stuff you can do with it. Anything around the Defender XDR stack. And I guess I like to dabble a little bit in Purview. I don't pretend to be an expert at it, but I guess I can hold my own on the Purview piece as well.
We're all having to dabble with Purview these days, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of those necessities now, I think. But no, I mean, I'm very much old school on-prem. Worked with some of the really early versions of Exchange. Exchange is pretty much where I grew up with. And then transitioned into 365 migrations into Exchange Online. But with that comes identity and access management. And obviously the key thing there is identities. So predominantly hybrid identities, because a lot of the large enterprises I've worked with are very heavily invested in AD. So AD is still the source of authority for them. So it's looking at that, extending their infrastructure into the cloud. So M365 services, security and identity compliance, Azure infrastructure as a service. So not just AVD, so moving data centers into Azure and see how that works. And a jack of all trades, master of none. I think
better than a master of one.
100%.
Yeah. Everyone always forgets the end of that saying.
That's how it ends. Yeah. That's interesting. So I know we're running over, and I'm really sorry because I could keep this going all day. You mentioned the start of authority there with Exchange identities being on premise.
You can now
move it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it worth us having a chat about legacy management styles versus what we can now do with that new feature? Maybe
think that would make a good.
I think good next. The only downside is it doesn't sync back.
Yes.
Yet.
Yeah.
But I think that's actually a good one. So having that as where's there going to be the authority for those accounts? Is it going to be cloud managed?
Did we just decide on next episode topic already?
I think
essentially. Because I think a lot of people don't realise that if you're carrying a domain from yesteryear, back from the SBS days when you had Exchange on-prem and stuff like that, the way you manage it now is very different to the way that you should be managing stuff. Yeah. So it'd be cool maybe to bring people's attention to the new features that just came out of preview and what we can now do. Maybe a little discussion around that. Not my area of expertise, but I can comment on the stuff and how we used to do it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in having that discussion because I'm a little bit unsure on some of the more on-premise side of things, but certainly for the Entra element, we can touch on that. And there's a lot of community tools out there as well that I'd like to shout out.
Absolutely.
That kind of stuff.
That's why everyone keeps an on-prem Exchange. I know you can now remove it or turn it off. You can't remove it.
Yeah, that's what I want to dig into.
Years.
Yeah.
I got rid of mine.
I mean, you can get rid of it, but obviously doing things from anti-edit wasn't supported. It worked, but it wasn't supported. I mean, this is it. It's what's supported, what's not, what's good practice, what's bad practice, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into it in the next episode.
Absolutely.
Let's cover that. Cool. All right, guys. Well, look, it's been a good chat. And
cheers, gents.
I will catch you in the next one.
Yeah. Appreciate your time.
Have a good one.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks,